The first time I walked onto the court against Boris, I was 19 years old and I thought I was ready. I wasn't. I'd seen big servers before. I'd played against guys who could hit hard. But Boris was something completely different. He wasn't just powerful. He was unpredictable. You never knew where the ball was going. You'd set yourself up, you'd read the situation, and then the ball would just explode past you before your brain even finished processing the thought. I lost that first match, then the second, then the third. And what scared me most wasn't the losing it, was that I genuinely had no answer, no plan, nothing in my game that could touch what he was doing. I remember standing on the baseline thinking, this is what helpless feels like. Most guys on tour, you study them, you find a pattern, you find a way in. With Boris, I watched tape after tape and kept coming back to the same conclusion: this serve cannot be solved. I was wrong, but it took me a long time to figure out how.
Look, I was never exactly shy on a tennis court. I'd stare guys down, I'd get in their heads, I'd make the whole situation uncomfortable. That was part of my game. I knew how to use presence. But Boris did something different. He didn't need to say a word. He'd walk onto that court with his chest out, his chin up, this whole aura like he owned the place before the first ball was even tossed. I once said he walked around like, you're lucky we didn't win World War II. I meant it as a joke, kind of. The thing is, it wasn't accidental. His manager, Tyriak, built that into him deliberately, made Boris believe he was the most powerful force on any court he stepped onto. And when you believe that completely, your opponent feels it. I played him in a Davis Cup match that lasted over 6 hours. 6 hours. He won. And he didn't look tired afterwards. That tells you everything you need to know about Boris Becker.
Boris was very powerful. That's the first thing. When he controlled the point, nobody liked it. You can't build a strategy around an opponent who can end the rally from anywhere on the court at any moment. The other thing, and this is important, Boris ran hot and cold. Some weeks he was beatable, but I never got those weeks. Every time we met late in a tournament, he was on, every single time. You can prepare perfectly, train perfectly, arrive in the best shape of your life, and then Boris decides today is his day. What do you do with that? I changed my racket. I learned to serve and volley. I restructured my entire preparation schedule around grass. All of it specifically to solve the Boris problem at Wimbledon. I got to the final. He beat me straight sets. I'm not complaining, that's tennis. But it tells you something about what kind of player he was, that I had to rebuild significant parts of my game just to have a conversation with him on grass.
Boris and I were very different people. On the court we played similar tennis, serve and volley, attack the net, finish the point quickly, but everything else was opposite. I was quiet, reserved. I preferred to let the tennis speak. Boris was emotional, loud, pumping his fist, shouting at himself, filling the whole stadium with energy. I found that interesting, actually. We arrived at the same style of play through completely different personalities. And I think that's why our matches were so intense. It wasn't just two serve and volleyers playing each other. It was two completely different approaches to competing, two completely different temperaments, meeting in the middle of a tennis court. I respected Boris enormously, still do. He was one of the few opponents where I genuinely never felt I was better than him, not once. Some players you beat and you think, yes, I was the better player today. With Boris, even when I won, I thought we were equal. He just had a slightly worse day than me. That's a rare thing to say about anyone.
When I came up on tour, Boris was already a legend. 3 Wimbledon titles, multiple Grand Slams. He'd built something at that tournament that nobody else had a complete identity around. One court, one surface, one stage. And honestly, that didn't intimidate me. Maybe it should have. But I looked at Boris and I saw someone I needed to understand, not someone I needed to fear. What made him genuinely dangerous wasn't any single weapon. It was the combination. The serve was enormous. The athleticism was unlike anything you'd seen from a big man diving, rolling, throwing himself at volleys that had no business being returned. And then the mental side, when Boris believed he could beat you, you felt that belief across the net. He defined what power tennis looked like before anyone had a name for it. Before Boris, the idea that a big man could also be that athletic, that fast, that instinctive at the net, it didn't exist. He made the template. To beat Boris, you couldn't just match one thing he did. You had to be a more complete version of everything he represented. That's not a small ask. That's what he demanded from every opponent just by walking on the court.
In 1988, I was the world #1. I'd won 3 Grand Slams that year. Baseline tennis was at its absolute peak. Patient, systematic, grind the opponent down until they broke. That was the formula. That was what worked. And Boris was already making it obsolete. Here's what's strange about our rivalry. I beat him more often during the regular season, but at the Grand Slams, he beat me every single time we played. 3 times, 0 for me. So what does that tell you? It tells you Boris saved his best tennis for the biggest stages, which, if you think about it, is actually more terrifying than just being consistently good. The baseline players, myself, Ivan, the whole generation, we were built on consistency, repeatability. You knew exactly what you were getting from us every single day. Boris was the opposite. Unpredictable, explosive. When he was fully switched on, none of our systems worked, none of our patience mattered. You can't outlast a fire. You can only hope it burns itself out before it reaches you.
So I kept watching tape hundreds of hours, and then one day I saw it. Just before Boris tossed the ball to serve, his tongue moved slightly, unconsciously. If it sat in the middle of his lip, the serve was going up the middle or at the body. If it shifted to the side, the serve was going wide every single time, without exception. The serve that had destroyed me 3 matches in a row had a tell, and he had absolutely no idea. Now, here's the part people don't fully appreciate. The hard part wasn't reading the serve. The hard part was pretending I couldn't. I had to sit on that information for most of each match, resist the temptation, and only use it at the moments that could break the match open. One wrong move and he'd notice. The whole thing would be gone. I carried that secret for years. Then one evening at Oktoberfest, I finally told him. Boris nearly fell off his chair. He looked at me and said, "I used to go home and tell my wife, it's like he reads my mind." He was reading his tongue the whole time. He just didn't know it.
Here's the thing about Boris that not enough people talk about. He was essentially uncoachable. Nick Bollettieri summed it up perfectly. He said Boris knew a lot, and what he didn't know, he thought he knew, and he'd intimidate everyone around him into believing he knew it too. And honestly, I understood that completely, because I was the same way. We both had this thing where the game came from somewhere deep and uncontrollable inside us. Brilliant moments, total meltdowns, and very little in between. The two of us, 2 guys with too much going on inside to ever fully harness what we had. The difference is I can see it clearly now. Boris probably can too. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If Boris had accepted even a small amount of real coaching, real discipline, real structure around that extraordinary talent, he doesn't win 6 Grand Slams. He wins 10, maybe 12. The raw material was all there, the serve, the athleticism, the belief, but nobody could tell him anything he hadn't already decided for himself. That's a gift, and it's a limitation. Sometimes it's both at the exact same time.
Overall, our head-to-head was close, nearly even. By that measure, you'd say we were equals, fine. But at Grand Slams, Boris won almost every time we played. And I need to be honest about that, because that's where it actually matters. It wasn't preparation. I prepared better than almost anyone on tour. It wasn't fitness. It wasn't tactics. I had answers for everything Boris did on paper. But paper doesn't play tennis. Here's the irony that I've thought about many times. I built my entire career on discipline, systems, repeatability, remove the emotion, execute the plan, outlast the opponent. That was my game. That was my identity. Boris built his career on the exact opposite. Pure instinct, pure emotion, no plan, just pure belief that today was his day. And at the moments that defined careers, the Grand Slam finals, the big stages, his way beat my way repeatedly. I don't have a satisfying explanation for that. Sometimes the most disciplined preparation in the world walks into a wall of pure instinct and comes off second. That's not a comfortable conclusion for someone like me, but it's the truth.
3 consecutive Wimbledon finals against the same opponent. I don't think people fully appreciate how unusual that is. 3 years in a row, Boris and I walked onto center court to decide the championship. No other pair did that in our era. Each match was completely different. Different momentum, different turning points, different versions of both of us. But the one I think about most is 1990. Boris was close, very close. He had the lead in the 5th set and he was playing well, I could feel it. Then I hit a backhand lob that landed exactly where it needed to land. The point turned. The match turned. Boris said afterwards, it was frustrating. When you're at the net waiting for a pass and he lobs, I understood that feeling. I'd been on the other side of Boris doing things to me that I had no answer for. What stays with me most though is something Roger Federer said years later, that watching our Wimbledon finals was the reason he chose tennis over football. I don't need another trophy after hearing that.
In 1995, Boris came into the Wimbledon final having just beaten Andre in the semifinals. He was confident, he had every right to be. That was his court, his tournament, his stage. He'd been the man there for a decade, and I served, and I kept serving, and he couldn't break me, not once, not in the entire match. Afterwards, Boris said something that I've always respected him for. He said, I'd given Pete the keys to my living room. It belongs to him now. That takes a certain kind of greatness to say out loud. Most champions would find an excuse. Boris just told the truth. He also said that match was the reason he eventually wanted to retire. That when he was playing his best tennis on his best surface against someone at their best, he knew the outcome. And he couldn't accept playing just to compete. He played to win, always. I understand that completely. And honestly, hearing Boris say that about me means more than most trophies. Because Boris Becker didn't hand out compliments, he handed out defeats. When he gave you his respect instead, you'd earned something real.
Let me tell you what Boris actually changed. Before him, power tennis existed in pieces. Big serves here, aggressive net play there. Boris assembled it into something complete and coherent for the first time. The jumping serve, he did that before anyone. The diving volley, that was him. Throwing his entire body at a ball that had no business being reached, landing on the grass and somehow still winning the point. Nobody did that before Boris. Every player who came after Pete, Andre, the whole generation that followed, they all inherited a game that Boris helped build. Most of them don't even know it. Here's how I'd summarize what made him terrifying. Ivan was disciplined. Stefan was precise. Pete was complete. But Boris was none of those things, and somehow more dangerous than all of them on his best day. Because you can prepare for discipline, you can prepare for precision, you cannot prepare for pure, uncontrollable force of nature. Boris at his best wasn't playing tennis, he was just happening to the other person on the court. And there is absolutely nothing in any coaching manual that tells you how to handle that. And